My name is Serafina, and this Christmas dinner destroyed everything I believed about family loyalty. As I walked back from the bathroom, I froze outside the dining room when I heard my parents whispering about moving my sister Rebecca's family into my $350,000 house while I was deployed overseas. The house I had saved every penny for. The house that represented my independence and future. My own parents were plotting to steal my life's work and hand it over to their golden child daughter. Before we dive into how I discovered this betrayal and what I did about it, I want to know where you are watching from tonight. Are you team justice or team forgiveness when family crosses the line? Hit that like button if you have ever felt overlooked by your own family, and make sure to subscribe because this story has more twists than a soap opera. And trust me, you will want to see how karma finally catches up to people who think blood relations give them the right to steal your dreams. Let me back up and give you the full picture of how we got to this moment of betrayal. I am 28 years old and have spent the last 6 years in the Army, working my way up from private to staff sergeant. Every deployment, every missed holiday, every sacrifice was made with one goal in mind: buying my own house and building the stable life I never had growing up. My parents, Margaret and David, always made it clear that Rebecca was their favorite. She was the baby born when I was already 10 years old, and she could do no wrong in their eyes. While I was expected to earn everything through hard work, Rebecca got handed opportunities on a silver platter. When she wanted to go to college, they paid her tuition in full. When I wanted the same, they told me the military would be character building. Rebecca married her high school sweetheart, Marcus, right after graduation. He has never held a steady job, jumping from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. They have 3 children under the age of 7. And Rebecca has never worked a day in her life because, according to my parents, her job is being a mother. Meanwhile, I have been deployed to Afghanistan twice, saved every penny of my combat pay, and lived in tiny barracks apartments to make my house dream come reality. 6 months ago, I finally closed on my house in our hometown of Cedar Falls, Iowa. It is a beautiful colonial with 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a wraparound porch that I fell in love with the moment I saw it. $350,000 of my blood, sweat, and tears went into that down payment and mortgage approval. I planned to move in after my current deployment ended in February. But apparently, my parents had other plans. That Christmas Eve, I was on emergency leave because my grandfather had passed away suddenly. I flew in just for the funeral and holiday dinner planning to fly back to my base in Germany the next day. The whole family gathered at my parents' house just like we did every year. Rebecca and Marcus brought the kids, and everyone was cooing over how adorable they were, how much they had grown, how Rebecca was such a wonderful mother. I sat there in my dress uniform, having come straight from the funeral service, watching my family celebrate, while I felt like an outsider in my own childhood home. Nobody asked about my deployment. Nobody asked about my house. Nobody seemed to care that I had been serving my country for the past 8 months. During dinner, Rebecca started complaining about their housing situation. They were renting a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, and with 3 kids, space was incredibly tight. Marcus had lost his latest job selling insurance, and they were behind on rent. She looked meaningfully at our parents while describing how the baby had to sleep in their bedroom because there was no space for a crib anywhere else. My mother immediately jumped in with sympathy, talking about how terrible it was that her grandchildren did not have proper bedrooms. My father nodded along, making comments about how family should help family in times of need. I could see where this was heading, and my stomach started churning. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs. As I was coming back down the hallway, I heard voices from the dining room. Rebecca had taken the kids to the living room to play, and Marcus was helping clear dishes in the kitchen, so I assumed my parents were alone. I was wrong to assume they would wait until I left to have this conversation. "We need to talk to Serafina about the house situation," my mother was saying in a low voice. "Rebecca's family needs that space more than she does. Serafina is single, she is always deployed anyway, and that house is just sitting empty." My father's response made my blood run cold. "You are absolutely right. 4 bedrooms for one person is wasteful when our grandchildren are cramped into that tiny apartment. Serafina was always the practical one. She will understand that family comes first." "I think we should present it as temporary," my mother continued. "Just until Marcus gets back on his feet and they can find something else. Maybe a year or 2. Serafina can stay in the guest room when she is on leave." The guest room? In my own house, that I had sacrificed everything to buy. "Rebecca mentioned that the house has that lovely playroom in the basement," my father added. "Perfect for the kids, and the backyard is big enough for a swing set. It is exactly what they need." I stood frozen in that hallway, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. They were not just suggesting that my sister borrow my house. They were planning to move her entire family into my home and treat me like an occasional visitor. The house that represented my independence, my future, my reward for years of sacrifice, was being casually redistributed to the golden child who had never worked for anything in her life. But what came next was even worse. "Do you think Serafina will resist?" my mother asked. My father chuckled, and the sound made me sick. "What choice does she have? The mortgage is in her name, but we can make the payments if needed. And honestly, she owes it to the family after all we have done for her. We fed her, housed her, raised her. Now it is time for her to give back." I had heard enough. My own parents thought I owed them my house because they had performed the basic duties of parenthood. They thought my military service was just a fun adventure that left me with disposable income to share. They thought my dreams and goals meant nothing compared to Rebecca's comfort. I quietly made my way back upstairs and locked myself in my childhood bedroom. The same room that had been converted into Rebecca's nursery when she was born, forcing me to move to the cramped attic space. Even as a child, I had been displaced for Rebecca's convenience. As I sat on that small bed, looking at the faded posters and academic awards that nobody had bothered to take down, I realized that this pattern had been my entire life. Serafina sacrifices, Rebecca benefits. Serafina works, Rebecca gets rewarded. Serafina serves her country, Rebecca gets her house. But this time was going to be different. This time, I was not going to be the good daughter who quietly accepted whatever my family decided was best. I had legal ownership of that house, and I was going to fight for what was mine. The war was just beginning. I spent that entire sleepless night planning my strategy. By morning, I had made several decisions that would change everything. First, I was going to let this conversation happen exactly as my parents planned, but I was going to be recording every word. Second, I was going to contact my military legal assistance office to understand my rights. Third, I was going to start documenting every instance of my parents' favoritism and financial manipulation over the years. The next morning, Christmas Day, I acted like nothing had happened. I helped with breakfast, played with Rebecca's kids, and pretended to be the dutiful daughter they expected me to be. But inside, I was preparing for battle. After lunch, my parents asked me to sit down in the living room for a family discussion. Rebecca and Marcus were there too, looking nervous but hopeful. The children were napping upstairs, giving us privacy for what my parents clearly thought would be an easy conversation. I had my phone in my pocket, recording everything. "Serafina, honey." My mother began using the same tone she used to use when she was about to tell me that my plans did not matter. "We have been thinking about your house situation, and we have a wonderful opportunity for the whole family." I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of opportunity?" My father leaned forward, putting on his most persuasive smile. Well, you know how Rebecca and Marcus have been struggling with space for the kids. That apartment is just too small for a growing family, and your house has all that room just sitting empty while you are deployed. Go on, I said calmly. Rebecca jumped in, tears already forming in her eyes. Serafina, I know it is a lot to ask, but we are really desperate. The kids share one tiny bedroom and the baby cries all night because there is no space for proper furniture arrangement. We have been looking for a bigger place, but everything is so expensive, and with Marcus between jobs. Marcus nodded earnestly. We would take really good care of the place, better than some rental management company would, and it would just be temporary until we get back on our feet. My mother reached over and patted my hand. Think about how wonderful it would be for your nephews and niece to grow up in that beautiful house with the big backyard. You could be like their fun aunt who visits, and they would have proper bedrooms and space to play. Fun aunt who visits? In my own house, I let them continue their pitch for another 10 minutes, watching as they painted this picture of how perfect the arrangement would be. How I was single anyway, so I did not really need all that space. How I was always traveling for the military, so the house would just sit empty. How family takes care of family, and this was my chance to really make a difference in my niece and nephew's lives. Finally, my father delivered what he clearly thought was the closing argument. Serafina, your mother and I raised you to understand the importance of family. We sacrificed for you kids, and now it is time for the next generation to benefit from what we have all built together. This house could be the foundation for your sister's family's future. I let the silence stretch for a long moment, watching their expectant faces. Rebecca was still sniffling. Marcus was nodding encouragingly, and my parents looked confident that they had presented an irresistible case. Then I smiled. That is interesting, I said slowly. Because I overheard you two last night discussing this plan, and the conversation was quite different from what you just presented. The color drained from my mother's face. My father's confident expression faltered. I heard you talking about how I owe this to the family because you fed and housed me as a child. I heard you discussing how you could make the mortgage payments, if needed, as if you were planning to take over my house permanently. I heard you laughing about whether I would resist and deciding that I did not have a choice in the matter. Rebecca's tears stopped immediately. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I also heard you refer to my military service as if it were some kind of extended vacation that left me with extra money to share. As if 6 years of deployments, missing every family holiday, and serving my country was just a convenient way to fund my sister's lifestyle. Now wait just a minute. My father started, but I held up my hand. I am not finished. You want to talk about family obligations and what we owe each other. Let me give you some numbers. In the 6 years since Rebecca got married, how much money have you given her family? They looked at each other uncomfortably. I will tell you because I pay attention. You paid for her wedding $15,000. You have bought them a car twice when theirs broke down $12,000 total. You have covered their rent at least 4 times that I know of $8,000. You bought all the furniture for their first apartment and most of the baby equipment for all 3 kids, probably another $10,000. You have given them at least $45,000 in the past 6 years. Rebecca's mouth fell open. I do not think she had ever added it up. Now let me tell you what you have given me in that same time period. When I needed money for my military equipment that was not provided, you told me to figure it out. When I wanted to come home for Christmas but could not afford the flight, you told me military service was my choice. When I asked for help with the down payment on my house after saving for 4 years, you told me that homeownership was a personal responsibility. My mother tried to interrupt. Serafina, that is not fair. Rebecca has children to think about. Rebecca has children because Rebecca chose to have children with a man who has never held a steady job. Those are choices, not emergencies, that require me to sacrifice my future. I stood up, looking down at all of them. But here is the most important thing you need to understand. I did not buy that house as a family asset to be redistributed at your discretion. I bought it as my home, my sanctuary, my reward for years of sacrifice that none of you seem to appreciate or even acknowledge. I pulled out my phone and showed them that it was recording. I have documented this entire conversation, including your admission that you believe I owe you my house and that you planned this ambush without any consideration for my feelings or rights. I have also been in contact with my legal assistance office, and they have made it very clear that no one can force me to let anyone live in my property. The room was completely silent now. So here is what is going to happen. Rebecca's family will find their own solution to their housing problem just like every other family in America does. My house will remain my house, and you will all learn to respect the fact that I am an adult who has earned the right to make my own decisions. I headed toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. If I hear even a whisper of you trying to manipulate me about this again, I will be sharing this recording with the entire extended family, so they can hear exactly how you really feel about the daughter who has served her country while you handed everything to the one who has never worked a day in her life. I walked out of that house and drove straight to the airport, cutting my leave short. The war had officially begun. Flying back to my base in Germany, I felt a mixture of liberation and devastation. I had finally stood up to my family's manipulation, but I had also potentially destroyed every relationship that mattered to me. As the plane crossed the Atlantic, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to build my own support network of people who actually valued me. My first ally came from an unexpected place. When I returned to base, I was still emotionally raw from the confrontation. During our weekly team meeting, my commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Williams, noticed that I seemed distracted. She asked me to stay after the meeting. Colonel Williams was a 45-year-old African-American woman who had worked her way up through the ranks over 20 years. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, and she had always been supportive of my career development. I had never talked to her about personal issues before, but something about her direct, no-nonsense approach made me feel like I could trust her. "Martinez," she said, using my last name as she always did. "You look like someone who has been through a battle. Want to talk about it?" I found myself telling her the entire story. The years of favoritism, the house I had saved for the Christmas ambush, everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed my perspective completely. "Martinez, what you are describing is not family loyalty. It is financial abuse. Your parents have spent years conditioning you to believe that your accomplishments exist for your sister's benefit. That is not normal family dynamics." She leaned back in her chair, considering her words carefully. I grew up in a similar situation. I was the responsible one, the one who worked hard and followed rules. My brother was the one who got bailed out of every mistake. It took me years to realize that my parents were not teaching him responsibility. They were teaching me that my value came from what I could provide for others. This was exactly what I needed to hear. Someone who understood the dynamic and could validate that my anger was justified. "Here is what you need to understand," she continued. "Your family is going to escalate this conflict. They are going to try guilt manipulation and probably sabotage. You need to be prepared for a long campaign, not just one battle." She was right. Over the next 3 weeks, the attacks came from every direction. My mother called me crying, saying that I had broken Rebecca's heart, and that the kids were asking why Aunt Serafina did not want them to have bedrooms. My father sent long emails about family values and how disappointed he was in my selfishness. Rebecca herself called sobbing about how they might get evicted and how could I live with myself knowing my nephews and niece might be homeless. But the worst came from my extended family. Somehow, word had spread about our conflict, but the version they heard was that I was refusing to help my sister in a time of desperate need. My aunts started calling to lecture me about Christian charity. My cousins posted passive-aggressive social media messages about people who forget where they come from. My grandmother, the only family member I had always felt close to, left me a voicemail saying she was ashamed of the person I had become. I was starting to crack under the pressure when Colonel Williams introduced me to my second ally. "Martinez, I want you to meet someone," she said one afternoon, leading me to her office where a woman in civilian clothes was waiting. "This is Dr. Sarah Kim, a family therapist who works with military personnel. She specializes in helping service members deal with toxic family dynamics." Dr. Kim was probably in her late 30s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "I understand you are dealing with some family pressure around a property situation," she said. Over the next hour, Dr. Kim helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a classic pattern in dysfunctional families. "Your family has assigned you the role of the responsible child who exists to support the irresponsible child," she explained. "When you try to change that dynamic, the entire family system fights back because your independence threatens their established order." She gave me strategies for dealing with the manipulation, how to recognize guilt trips, how to set boundaries, how to respond to emotional blackmail. Most importantly, she helped me understand that protecting my own interests was not selfish. It was necessary for my mental health and future happiness. "Your family is used to you giving in when they apply enough pressure," she said. "They are going to keep escalating until you either cave or they realize you have really changed. Be prepared for it to get worse before it gets better." My third ally emerged from an online support group that Dr. Kim recommended. It was a forum for adult children dealing with narcissistic and manipulative parents. Reading the stories there, I realized I was not alone. Hundreds of people shared experiences of being designated as the family caretaker while watching their siblings get endless support and forgiveness. One member, a woman who went by the username Military Mom, became particularly important to my situation. She was a Navy veteran who had gone through something remarkably similar with her family 10 years earlier. Her parents had tried to pressure her into giving her brother money for a business venture, using the same tactics my family was using. "They will try to isolate you," she wrote in a private message. "They will make it seem like the entire family is against you and you are the only one being unreasonable. But stick to your boundaries. I promise you there are family members who see what is really happening, but are afraid to speak up." She was right about the isolation tactics. My parents had clearly been working the family network, presenting their version of events and painting me as the villain. But she was also right about there being family members who saw through it. My cousin Jake, who was my age and had always been more like a brother to me, reached out privately. "I do not know exactly what is going on with your parents and Rebecca," he wrote in a text message, "but I remember how different they always treated you two. If you need someone to talk to who is not taking sides, I am here." Jake's support meant everything to me because he knew our family dynamics better than anyone outside of it. He had grown up seeing the favoritism, the different standards, the way my accomplishments were minimized, while Rebecca's slightest efforts were celebrated. Having him acknowledge that pattern made me feel less crazy. Through Jake, I learned that not everyone in the family was buying my parents' narrative. My uncle Robert, my father's brother, had apparently questioned why I should be expected to give up my house when Rebecca and Marcus had never been required to solve their own problems. My Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister, had privately wondered why my parents did not just help Rebecca find a bigger rental instead of trying to take over my property. But these family members were not willing to publicly oppose my parents, who were the unofficial heads of our extended family. They supported me privately while staying neutral publicly, which was better than nothing, but still left me feeling alone in the fight. The most surprising ally came from Rebecca's own husband, Marcus. 3 weeks after our confrontation, he called me directly. "Serafina, I need to talk to you about something," he said, his voice nervous. "I want you to know that this whole thing with your house was not my idea. Your parents approached Rebecca about it before they talked to you, and they made it sound like you had already agreed to help us." This revelation was huge. My parents had manipulated Rebecca and Marcus just as much as they had manipulated me. They had set up a situation where I looked like the bad guy for backing out of an arrangement I had never agreed to in the first place. "I think what they are doing to you is wrong," Marcus continued. "We can figure out our own housing situation. We always have before. I just wanted you to know that I am not part of this campaign against you." Marcus's call gave me hope that this conflict might not destroy my relationship with my sister permanently. If my parents had manipulated her into thinking I had already agreed to help, then her anger and hurt were based on false information. But it also revealed how calculating and deliberate my parents' strategy had been. This was not a spontaneous family discussion that had gone wrong. This was a planned manipulation designed to transfer my property to their preferred child, while making me look like the villain for resisting. The battle lines were now clearly drawn, and I had built a network of allies who could help me fight back. But I had no idea that the biggest betrayal was still coming. Just when I thought I had built a solid support network, everything came crashing down through the most devastating betrayal of all. It came from Colonel Williams, the person I had trusted most with my vulnerability. 2 months after our Christmas confrontation, I was feeling more confident about my situation. My therapy sessions with Dr. Kim were helping me maintain boundaries, my online support group kept me grounded, and Marcus had even convinced Rebecca to stop the guilt trip phone calls. I thought the worst was behind me. Then I got called into Colonel Williams' office on a Wednesday morning in late February. "Martinez, sit down," she said, but her tone was different from usual, colder, more formal. "I have received some concerning information about your family situation." She began pulling out a folder I had never seen before. "It seems there have been some complaints filed about your conduct during your recent leave." My stomach dropped. "What kind of complaints?" "Your parents contacted the base through official channels. They have submitted a formal complaint alleging that you have been verbally abusive to family members, threatening them with legal action over a property dispute and causing emotional distress to minor children." I could not breathe. My own parents had weaponized the military against me. "They have also provided recordings of phone conversations where you allegedly made threats about destroying family relationships and isolating your sister's children from their extended family." "Those recordings do not exist," I said firmly, "because I never made those threats." Colonel Williams looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, disappointment mixed with something that looked like disgust. "Martinez, I have listened to portions of these recordings. I heard your voice making statements about making your family pay for their manipulation and ensuring that your nephews and niece understand what kind of people their grandparents really are." The room was spinning. Those words sounded like things I might have said but taken completely out of context and edited together to sound threatening. "Ma'am, I think these recordings have been manipulated. My parents recorded our Christmas conversation without my knowledge, and I think they have edited together pieces to make me sound threatening." "That is a serious accusation, Martinez. Are you claiming that your family has fabricated evidence against you?" The way she said it made it clear she did not believe me. I realized with growing horror that this was not an investigation. This was a predetermined conclusion. "I am also required to inform you that your family has expressed concerns about your mental health. They have provided documentation from multiple family members stating that you have been exhibiting signs of paranoia, aggressive behavior, and persecution complexes since your last deployment. I felt like I was drowning. Ma'am, with respect, those are the exact tactics that Dr. Kim warned me my family would use. This is escalation designed to isolate me and force me to comply with their demands. Colonel Williams closed the folder. Martinez, I have known you for 3 years. You are a good soldier, but this situation has clearly affected your judgment. Your family is not the enemy here. They are concerned about you and trying to help. Help me by stealing my house. They are not stealing anything. They have shown me the paperwork for your mortgage, and they are prepared to take over the payments if you are struggling financially. They are offering to maintain the property while you are deployed and allow you to stay there during leave periods. That sounds like a generous family arrangement to me. I stared at her in disbelief. My parents had somehow convinced my commanding officer that their theft was actually generosity. Ma'am, that house is my legal property. I am not struggling financially. I do not need or want their help maintaining it. Martinez, your family loves you. They are worried about you. And frankly, after reviewing the situation, so am I. Then she delivered the blow that shattered my world. I am recommending you for mandatory psychological evaluation and temporary removal from sensitive duties pending the outcome of that evaluation. I am also strongly suggesting that you consider accepting your family's help with the property situation as a way to reduce stress in your life. I sat there in stunned silence as I realized what had happened. My parents had not just attacked me personally. They had attacked my career, my reputation, and my credibility with the person I had trusted most. They had taken the vulnerability I had shared with Colonel Williams and used it to paint me as unstable and paranoid. I am also required to inform you, she continued, that if these family conflicts continue to affect your performance or if additional complaints are filed, we will need to consider more serious disciplinary action. The message was clear: submit to your family's demands or face military consequences. Do you have anything to say for yourself, Martinez? I looked at this woman who I had respected and trusted, who had listened to my story and claimed to understand, who was now using my own words against me to force me into submission. Just one thing, ma'am. I trusted you with the truth about my situation, and you have used that trust to help my family manipulate me. I hope you can live with that. I walked out of her office feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. My family had not just betrayed me. They had turned my own commanding officer into a weapon against me. That night, I called Dr. Kim in desperation. They are using the system against me, I told her through tears. They have made me look like the crazy one, and now my career is in jeopardy. Serafina, this is exactly what I warned you about. Toxic families do not just use emotional manipulation, they use institutional manipulation. They find authority figures who will validate their version of reality. But how could Colonel Williams believe them? She knows me. She has seen my work, my character, my dedication. Because your parents came prepared with documentation recordings and multiple family members backing up their story. They presented themselves as concerned family members dealing with a troubled daughter. Colonel Williams probably thinks she is helping you by encouraging you to accept their support. Dr. Kim's voice became more urgent. Serafina, you need to understand that this is a coordinated attack designed to isolate you completely. They are not going to stop until you surrender your house and accept your role as the family provider. Then what am I supposed to do? My career is on the line now. You document everything. You find evidence of their manipulation. And you find allies who cannot be turned against you. But as I hung up the phone that night, I felt hopeless. My family had proven they were willing to destroy my military career to get what they wanted. They had turned my trusted mentor against me. They had isolated me from my extended family, and now from my professional family as well. I had no idea that my salvation was about to come from the most unexpected source of all, someone who had been watching this entire drama unfold and collecting evidence of their own. My salvation came in the form of a 72-year-old woman I had never met, wielding a manila folder full of evidence that would change everything. Her name was Eleanor Montgomery, and she had been my grandfather's attorney for over 30 years. 3 days after my devastating meeting with Colonel Williams, I received a certified letter requesting my presence at Eleanor's law office in Cedar Falls. I was still on emergency leave pending my psychological evaluation, so I flew home immediately, though I dreaded facing my family again. Eleanor's office was in a historic downtown building, all dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books. She was a petite woman with steel gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through to your soul. "Miss Martinez," she said as I entered her office, "please sit down. We have quite a bit to discuss regarding your grandfather's estate and some recent developments involving your family." I had no idea what my grandfather's estate had to do with anything, but I was desperate for any ally who might understand my situation. "Your grandfather came to see me 6 months before he passed away." Eleanor began opening that manila folder. "He was very concerned about some conversations he had overheard between your parents regarding your military service and your house purchase." My heart started racing. Grandpa had known about their plans. "Your grandfather was a smart man who understood family dynamics very well. He had watched your parents' treatment of you and your sister for years, and he was troubled by what he saw. When he heard them discussing your house as if it were a family asset to be redistributed, he decided to take action." Eleanor pulled out a document that made my hands shake as I read it. "He changed his will to leave you his entire estate, including his house, his savings, and his investment portfolio. The total value is approximately $400,000. I stared at the papers in shock. My grandfather had left me everything. "But here is the interesting part," Eleanor continued. "Your parents do not know about this yet. The will reading was postponed due to your deployment, and I have been waiting for the right time to execute his final wishes." She leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. "Your grandfather also did something else. He asked me to investigate your family's financial situation because he suspected there were things you did not know about." Eleanor pulled out another stack of documents that made my blood run cold. "Your parents have been claiming your sister's family as dependents on their tax returns for the past 4 years, collecting significant tax benefits. They have also been using her children's Social Security numbers to claim child tax credits while simultaneously reporting no income support provided to her family." "That is tax fraud," I whispered. "It gets worse. I hired a private investigator to look into Marcus's employment history. He has not been between jobs as your family claims. He has been working under the table for your father's construction company for 2 years, avoiding taxes and allowing your parents to pay him below minimum wage while claiming he is unemployed." The evidence kept coming. Bank records showing that my parents had been funneling money through Rebecca's accounts to hide assets. Credit card statements revealing that they had been making large purchases using her name and Social Security number. Documentation proving that they had claimed her as a dependent while she was receiving government assistance for low-income families. "Your family has been running a coordinated financial fraud scheme," Eleanor said bluntly, "and they have been using your sister's children as cover for their illegal activities." I felt sick. "Does Rebecca know?" "Based on my investigation, no. Your sister appears to be as much a victim of their manipulation as you are. They have kept her financially dependent and legally vulnerable while using her family's situation to commit fraud." Eleanor pulled out one more document that made me gasp. "This is a recording your grandfather made of a conversation between your parents shortly before his death. He was wearing a wire because he suspected they might try to manipulate his estate as well." She pressed play on an old cassette recorder, and I heard my parents' voices clearly discussing their long-term plan. "Once we get Serafina's house for Rebecca, we will have solved the housing problem," my mother's voice said. "And when the old man dies, we can use his estate to pay off our debts and maybe buy that vacation property we have been looking at." "Serafina will never suspect the tax situation," my father's voice replied. "She is too busy playing soldier to pay attention to family finances. By the time she figures it out, if she ever does, the statute of limitations will protect us." The best part is that Rebecca thinks Marcus really is unemployed, so she is not asking questions about where money comes from. And Serafina thinks we are just favoring Rebecca, not understanding that we are using Rebecca's situation to fund our retirement. I listened in horror as my parents laughed about how they had manipulated both their daughters for years, using Rebecca as a cover for financial fraud while conditioning me to accept financial responsibility for the family. "Your grandfather was appalled," Eleanor said when the recording ended. "He realized that your parents were not just favoring one daughter over another. They were running a criminal enterprise using both daughters as cover." Eleanor pulled out her phone and showed me a text message thread. "I have been in contact with your cousin Jake, who reached out to me after your Christmas confrontation. He suspected something was wrong with your parents' financial situation because he is an accountant and their lifestyle never matched their reported income. Jake had been quietly investigating our family's finances and had found discrepancies that supported Eleanor's evidence. He had documentation of suspicious money transfers, questionable business deductions, and financial irregularities going back years. We now have enough evidence to prove that your parents have been committing tax fraud, identity theft, and financial manipulation," Eleanor said. "This goes far beyond a family dispute over a house. This is criminal activity." She leaned back in her chair and fixed me with that piercing stare. "Here is what we are going to do. First, you are going to file a formal complaint with the IRS providing all of this evidence. Second, we are going to contact the military investigators about your parents' false complaints against you, armed with proof that they are willing to commit fraud and file false reports to get what they want. Third, we are going to protect both you and your sister from further manipulation." "What about Rebecca? What happens to her when all this comes out?" "That depends on whether she was a willing participant or an unwitting victim. Based on our investigation, she appears to be a victim. Your grandfather's will includes provisions to help her transition to independence if she chooses to cooperate with the investigation." Eleanor handed me a business card. "Your grandfather asked me to tell you something if this day ever came. He said that you were the only family member who had ever earned anything through honest work, and that he was proud of your service and your integrity. He wanted to make sure you had the resources to fight back when your parents finally showed their true colors." For the first time in months, I felt hope. My grandfather had seen the truth about my family and had given me the tools to expose them. Eleanor had gathered irrefutable evidence of their crimes. Jake had provided additional financial documentation. The tables were about to turn, and my parents had no idea what was coming for them. Justice was finally within reach. The reckoning came swift and decisive, like the military operations I had trained for my entire adult life. Within 2 weeks of my meeting with Eleanor, my parents' carefully constructed house of lies came crashing down around them. The IRS investigation moved faster than anyone expected, probably because Eleanor had presented such a complete case with irrefutable documentation. Federal investigators froze my parents' accounts within days and launched a full audit going back 7 years. The fraud they uncovered was staggering, over $200,000 in false claims, unreported income, and tax evasion. But the real satisfaction came when military investigators reviewed Eleanor's evidence alongside my parents' false complaints against me. The recording of my parents planning to steal my house, combined with proof of their history of financial manipulation, completely undermined their credibility. Colonel Williams was forced to retract her recommendation for my psychological evaluation and issue a formal apology. "Martinez," she said during our follow-up meeting, "I owe you a significant apology. I allowed myself to be manipulated by people who presented themselves as concerned family members when they were actually criminals trying to silence a witness to their fraud." The military investigation revealed that my parents had contacted several other service members' families over the years offering to help with family financial mediation services. They had been using their strategy of institutional manipulation on other military families, convincing commanding officers that their adult children were financially irresponsible and needed family intervention. The domino effect was beautiful to watch. Marcus, faced with evidence that his in-laws had been using him as cover for tax fraud while paying him illegally low wages, finally found his backbone. He moved Rebecca and the kids out of my parents' sphere of influence and filed for legitimate employment with benefits and legal wages. Rebecca's reaction was the hardest part of this entire experience. When she learned the truth about our parents' financial crimes and how they had manipulated both of us, she called me sobbing with apologies. "Serafina, I had no idea they were lying to me about you agreeing to help with the house. I had no idea they were using my children for tax fraud. I thought you were just being selfish, but they were using me to steal from you and from the government." We had a long conversation where she revealed how controlled and isolated she had been. Our parents had discouraged her from working by claiming she was not smart enough for anything but being a mother. They had convinced her that Marcus was unemployed and that they were supporting the family out of generosity when they were actually profiting from the arrangement. "I never realized how differently they treated us until all this came out," she said. "You were expected to be independent and strong, while I was kept weak and dependent. They used both of us, just in different ways. Our relationship is still healing, but Rebecca has enrolled in community college and is working toward becoming a medical assistant. Marcus got a legitimate job with benefits, and they are building the kind of independent life they should have had from the beginning. Most importantly, they are teaching their children that hard work and integrity matter more than manipulation and shortcuts." The legal consequences for my parents were severe. My father received 18 months in federal prison for tax fraud and identity theft. My mother received 12 months and 3 years probation. They were ordered to pay full restitution plus penalties, which wiped out their savings and forced them to sell their house. But the social consequences were almost more devastating for them. Jake helped me organize a family meeting where we presented all the evidence to our extended family. Watching my aunts and uncles realize that my parents had been lying about me for years while simultaneously stealing from the government was deeply satisfying. My Uncle Robert summed it up perfectly. "We thought Serafina was being selfish about the house, but Margaret and David were actually trying to steal from her to cover up their own crimes. They made us all complicit in pressuring an honest person to enable criminal behavior." The family dynamics shifted completely. People who had lectured me about family loyalty were now apologizing and expressing admiration for my integrity. My grandmother, who had left that disappointed voicemail, called to tell me she was proud of me for standing up to corruption even when it cost me family relationships. Most importantly, I learned what chosen family really means. Eleanor became like a grandmother to me, helping me understand legal and financial matters while providing wisdom about family relationships. Dr. Kim taught me that protecting myself from toxic behavior is not selfish, but necessary. Jake proved that real family members support your growth instead of demanding your sacrifice. Colonel Williams, to her credit, became one of my strongest advocates after realizing how she had been manipulated. She helped me transfer to a new unit where I could advance my career without the shadow of false accusations. And she provided a glowing recommendation that fast-tracked my promotion to Sergeant First Class. My grandfather's inheritance allowed me to pay off my house completely and set up an education fund for Rebecca's children, ensuring that they would never be trapped by financial dependence the way their mother had been. More importantly, his letter to me which Eleanor delivered after the legal proceedings concluded, gave me the validation I had needed my entire life. "Serafina," he had written, "you have always been the moral compass of this family. Your integrity and work ethic inspire me every day. If you are reading this letter, it means your parents have finally revealed their true nature, and you have found the courage to fight back. I could not be prouder of the woman you have become. Build your own family with people who deserve your loyalty, and never let anyone convince you that you owe them your dreams." Today, I live in my beautiful house with the wraparound porch, and it truly feels like home. My chosen family includes Eleanor, who comes for dinner every Sunday, Dr. Kim, who has become a close friend, Jake and his wife, who host game nights, and even Marcus and Rebecca, who are slowly earning back my trust through consistent actions rather than empty words. I still serve my country with pride, but I also serve my own values and boundaries. I have learned that real family does not demand sacrifice of your integrity, your goals, or your happiness. Real family celebrates your successes and supports your growth. The best revenge against people who try to steal your dreams is building an even better life than they tried to take from you. My parents thought they could manipulate me into funding their retirement while keeping me isolated and dependent. Instead, they handed me the tools to expose their crimes and the motivation to build something beautiful without them. So, I want to hear from all of you watching this story unfold. Have you ever had family members who thought your success belonged to them? How did you handle people who tried to guilt you into sacrificing your future for their comfort? Drop your stories in the comments, because I know I am not the only one who has fought this kind of battle. Make sure to hit that like button if you believe in standing up for yourself, even when family pressure feels overwhelming, and subscribe for more stories about finding justice when the people closest to you try to tear you down. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that choosing yourself over toxic family dynamics is not selfish. It is survival. Thank you for taking this journey with me. And remember that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves, built on respect and integrity rather than manipulation and obligation.